Welcome everyone. In this demonstration we are painting a farmhouse landscape. This is a scene from the Morristown National Historic Park. Okay, here's the sketch. Using the rule of thirds, I am measuring out where the horizon line will be. And now drawing out the Wick house. And here, using a little bit of perspective, the vanishing point will be all the way over to the left running off the page. So the roof needs to be pitched downward toward the left slightly to ultimately match the vanishing point. Here I didn't pitch the roof well enough, so just fixing my mistake. And you can't have an old farmhouse without a chimney, right? And now for the snake-style wood fence. Using a bit of perspective here again, if you'll notice, the fence gets bigger as it gets closer to the viewer and smaller as it gets further away. And we absolutely must have a big old tree to give it that old nostalgic feeling. And lastly, just marking out where the tree line in the distance will be, and we're ready to paint. Working wet in wet, applying a light wash of raw sienna here. So this will be probably sometime late in the afternoon. So I want to show that late afternoon glow. And then working in a little cobalt blue and ultramarine blue into the mix. It's usually the higher up in the sky you go, the darker it gets. The trick is to work really fast and not worry about fussing too much, because otherwise you end up getting these splotches. Here I'm painting the tree line in the back. It doesn't matter if the paint is bleeding a little bit into the sky. It actually creates a pretty cool effect to sort of diffuse the tops of the trees for me. And here I'm just also tilting the paper toward me to stop some of the bleeding from going too far. Not worrying about painting every little blade of grass, just lay down the color of the grass or field and just move on to the next stage. We'll add all the details that we need at the end. And using a dry brush technique here to add the longer grasses sticking up into the fence. And this is just to add some texture to the painting. So I'm using very little water and just using the side of the brush and dragging the paint up to create the effect of long grasses leaning against the fence. Now on to the Wick house. The Wick house served as the headquarters for the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War in the 1700s. So this is a pretty historic building. in this painting, since the light is coming in from the top right, the left side of the Wick house will be in shadow. All right, now that we've got our initial wash laid out, here's where we start to define the values, and here's where the painting really starts to paint itself. So what I mean by defining values is we're going to add more dark values or dark color in areas, for example, that are more in shadow than the areas that are catching light. For instance, the big tree over to the left, that's going to be catching light on the right side because the light is coming in from the right, and the left side of the tree will be in shadow. As I mentioned in the beginning of this tutorial, the fence will appear to be bigger as it gets closer to us, and it'll appear smaller as it gets further away. So we're using a little bit of perspective here to create this. And in terms of the colors that I'm using to paint it, I'm using burnt umber and burnt sienna with a little ultramarine blue. Now, if you'll notice, I'm leaving sections where the grass pokes through the fence. It just makes it look a little more realistic than if we just painted the fence right through the grass. The left side of the painting is still not as dark as it needs to be, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And the last thing we'll do is refine the big tree on the left, as well as add little saplings in the background. Sometimes when these grasses dry up or catch light, they have a kind of an orangey yellow hue to them, so that's what I'm trying to depict here, especially as it gets later in the growing season. I'm using clean water here to diffuse the darker areas with the lighter areas. The mistake I used to make is I used to try to keep all the branches on the page, meaning the ends of the branches on the page. It's okay if the branch runs off the paper, it makes it look more realistic that way. Because this is a big tree. Now using a rigger brush to paint in the really small branches. I'm pulling the brush away from the paper as the branches get thinner. When I paint little saplings in the back, it's kind of the same deal as painting small branches, except you're just painting them vertically. So you're still using a rigger brush and just pulling the brush away from the paper as the tree gets thinner towards the top. Couple more trees in the distance there, and that should do it. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching.